So when you are ready to begin your oil pastel portrait sketch, there's kind of three approaches you can do. One is to do a grid drawing method. If you are doing this one, you do need to get me a photo, and then we need to get it to the right ratio, and then do that same method of adding the grid to both the reference and paper, and then bringing that over through that grid system. The second option would just be drawing as you would normally. Some methods that can be helpful, or some tips that can be helpful as you get started. As you start to lay out the base of your head and skull, starting with like a circle, kind of thinking of our skull shape overall, using that as that starting point, and then building out from that, building out that jawline. You can also start this by doing a triangle that extends down from that circle. And this can be a way just to help kind of convey the overall face shape. Once you have that initial face shape, you're going to measure about halfway across. So you're going to get that line of where there's the symmetry between the eyes, nose, and mouth. You're also going to do a line that is about halfway between your chin and the top of your head. This is going to feel really severe for your eyeline, but you got to keep in mind that you have about that 1/3 to 1/2 inch of the top of your head that's going to be your hair. For the eyes, you're going to have that placement on that line, and then with the spacing in between, you're going to have about an eye width for the bridge of your nose, those two eye widths for your eyes, and then it's usually about 1/2 to 3/4, depending on the person's hairstyle, to just how wide their face is for that last little bit on either end. And then for the eyes themselves, since you're drawing those two different eyes, it can be helpful to work on these both at the same time. This is going to help keep them more symmetrical to one another, whereas if you do one completely and then the other, it's a little bit more hard to maintain that symmetry. So do try to work on kind of each part at the same time. So I put in kind of the initial shaping, then the iris, then pupils, and then looked at the like eyelids, eyebrows, and then worked my way through. Some other details that you can incorporate are just kind of marking off where you're seeing the tear duct in the corner of your eyes. If you also want to get really more detailed, you can also include that mark of the waterline. So where you see that little bit of skin between where your eyelashes on the bottom end to where the eye starts. And then if you are somebody that is going to be drawing in eyelashes, I would say wait to do these till the very end. But with these, instead of doing straight lines, you want to do a slightly curved line. You're thinking of that natural curve of our eyelashes, and then using that shape, it's going to give you a more naturalistic look, and it's going to allow you to build those up in a way that is more natural, and it's going to look a little bit more realistic for you. But that'll be it for the eyes. Once you have that, then we're going to figure out that placement between the hairline and brows, the brows to the nose, and then nose to the chin. So this will end up being kind of a breakdown of thirds on the face. Does vary a little bit person to person, but is usually generally you're going to have about 1/3 of where the hairline ends to the brows or eyebrows. And then from the eyebrows to the nose is going to be that second third. And then the bottom of the nose to the chin is going to be that last third. And then for the nose itself, typically a good way to start this is start with the kind of middle, larger part of your nose. You can give yourself 2 guidelines that go down from the tear duct vertically to the face. That's going to give you that marker of where about the nostrils are going to meet the side of the face. And then if you kind of build off 2 smaller circles for the nostrils, this is going to give you that shaping for your nose. It's going to allow you to get a more realistic shape. And then for the bridge of your nose, I would recommend, instead of trying to outline, instead just kind of incorporate value to show where you're seeing kind of some of that cast shadow on the nose. You're not really seeing any direct lining on your bridge of your nose. And then for the mouth, with this, you can also think of kind of thirds with this one. So if you kind of break down the bottom of the nose to the chin, the first third is going to give you the like cleft above your lip, and then the lip line. And then the second third, usually just before that, you're going to have the end of your bottom lip, and then that last third is going to be either what remains of your chin. This one is one where it does vary a little bit more person to person, but generally those ratios are going to get you pretty close to realistic, and then you can adjust as needed. And then from there, some other details you can look at. If you see ears within your portrait, typically the eyebrow line is going to be where you're seeing the top of the ear, and then the bottom of your nose is going to be where you see the end. Again, one that varies a little bit person to person, but I would say as you look at your reference, kind of reference where you're seeing the kind of those markers of the ear in relation to those other features of the face. And then for the hair, got to keep in mind that as you build in your hair, you're going to consider the kind of shaping of the skull. So your hair is usually going to sit a little bit above that, especially if it's more textured or thick. Whereas as you start to go further down and the hair is laying against the sides of the face, then it's more of gravity. So that can be helpful as you start to lay that out. And then as you're doing hair texturing, usually straight lines, straight hair, and then for wavy hair, you're going to look at kind of almost like S-curves. Very curly or kinky hair, you're looking at almost like a corkscrew outline to start. And then a lot of hair is just kind of looking at where you're seeing instead of seeing the strands of hair, where you're seeing almost like the locks of hair, or where you're seeing those clear like outlines and shadows. And then neck is typically around either at the pupil or at the corner of the eye, depending on person to person. But that'll be it for kind of main features of portraiture. As you kind of go through, if you are kind of looking for a more naturalistic, not using grid drawing, YouTube can be really helpful just as far as kind of figuring out where you're getting stuck with certain features and then where things are not quite lining up correctly. So feel free to use those resources online. Also let me know if you're getting stuck on anything. Sometimes things just need a little bit more clarification or just adjustment depending on the overall portrait that you're looking at. And then just last couple of details that can be helpful to mark with your sketch. Typically your top lip is going to be darker than your bottom. With your eyes, it can be helpful just to shade in the iris and pupil so it doesn't look quite as scary. And then you also want to shade in a little bit of the white of the eye, especially underneath the top lid where you're getting that little bit of cast shadow. And then third option for these oil pastel portraits is to do something that's a little bit more abstracted. So with this, I would say think kind of same thing, kind of how the proportions of the face are. And then with abstraction, you're thinking of either minimizing, stylizing, exaggerating your features. So once you have kind of that general proportion, then you're thinking of what are you doing then to alter those. And then from here, thinking kind of same thing and working through the face. I would say think of kind of get yourself that outline, that general sizing for your face, and then once you have that, starting to break down kind of what the overall features look like, and then with this this is one that's a little bit more freeing where you can work a little bit more organically. You can also look at working more geometrically if you're not quite sure what you want to do for kind of a more abstracted style. I would say Google Images or Pinterest can really be your friend in seeing what is out there just as far as abstract portraits, because there's a lot of different styles and a lot of different methods that you can go about with this. So I would say utilize online resources for this one for sure, especially if you're not quite sure as far as stylistically how you want that to look. But abstracted can be a really nice method for this one. It works nicely since we're looking at oil pastel. We're going to be working with as a material that's usually a little bit harder to detail with, and it's also a nice one just as far as since we're going to be looking at color scheme. The freedom of kind of the abstract portrait allows you to be a little bit more creative as far as color scheme, allows you to look at colors that are typically not seen within portraiture. But that should be everything. Holler if you have questions, but you should be good to go to start your sketch.